In this lesson, we're going to continue looking at adding in architectural detail into our model. To pick up from the last lesson, we were creating internal walls. I believe the last thing I've done was actually join up these polygons of the pitched roofs with a bridge. I've now deleted those to make sure that we leave the ledge that we were talking about in the reference image at the top of these windows. There's actually a little gap, and where I bridged it before, you wouldn't have had this gap anymore, it would have joined up. So we've deleted that, and I've also gone through, put in all the necessary cuts and connects to make sure we don't have any intersecting geometry and everything lines up as is, which means we have a nice tidy model. And now we're going to look at adding in some window details. So the first thing I want to do is to isolate the walls, and in left-hand view I'm going to draw a spline to create the simple shape of our window. I'm just going to draw a rectangle and then bring that over to where we need it. I'm also just going to convert this, right click, convert to editable spline, and I'm going to select all of the vertices, right click and make them corners, which that didn't work. We're going to do it again. That'll stop any Bezier handles appearing, and when we move it, it means we won't get any curves in it, because obviously we need it to be a sharp box. So now we have that in the correct place for our window. I'll just align the pivot again so it's central to it, and we can unisolate everything else. And what I've done here, if I select all of these and isolate them, is if I go into the top view and select these small splines, you'll see I've created a window profile for the frame and for the internal window piece. I used the same method that I did for drawing the basic walls by putting an image on a plane and drawing over it. I simply went to Google and searched in window frame profile, and on the second row down, this is exactly what I was looking for. I just took an average of, say, 50 mil for the width of this, created a box, and scaled the image up to be 50 mil wide from there to there. I've adjusted I've adjusted this to match my scene. I didn't need this top detail, as you'll see from the images, although they're quite low res. It's just a flat edge that meets the floor. There's no little extra details sticking up internally or out externally. So I've just drawn over this, and these are the splines that I've come up with, which I think are good enough to work with. And one little tip that I always use when I'm creating windows this way is that you can give splines IDs, same way as you can give polygons, which I'm not entirely sure how many people know that. It was something that I learned when I was on my placement year, and has always come in handy. I can pick edges, and as you can see, surface properties, material IDs, ID1, ID2. This enables me to give it a different ID to the areas that I want to be like rubber seals, and then it means I can just use a multi-sub object, and I don't have to go through and select polygons and add IDs myself. It will automatically take these in the sweep with a tick box. But we'll show you an example of that once we've modeled the window. So I'm going to take the spline that we created, add a sweep modifier, pick custom shape, and we're going to pick the actual frame piece first, this bottom piece. Now, despite the way I've drawn this, I actually want this area to be on the outside. As we've seen from the reference image, our window has a flat edge on the internal piece, so this will be like a little windowsill for the exterior. Not that we're actually going to see it, but it's just a good reference to know which way round I've actually got the window. So we can see there's a gap. It's hasn't worked directly into the right place straight away. We can easily remedy this. So you can see from a spline we have these different align pivot selections that we can do, which just either make it sit on the inside of the pivot, or further inside or outside of the pivot, or centrally, or internally, you can just flick through and you can see all of these have different effects. So we'll just pick the middle. Which one's the best one for us? So that one looks like it's filling up the window box, and we'll do it on the inside. And that looks like it's... Oh, no, that hasn't worked. Oh, that's why, sorry. It's still got settings from a previous spline. So now we're at 0, 0. We can pick central, which we know will now fill the window box. And we can pick that and the bottom corner, and there we have it. Now the edges and these inside verts line up with the wall, and that's in the correct place. So be very careful of these X and Y values. If you've previously used something, Max can pick them up and obviously cause a little bit of confusion like it just did for me then. So now we've fixed that problem. We can copy, clone the spline, just a copy, not an instance, because we're going to pick this inside spline now, and this should have a similar effect. So it should be in the correct place, because we know that the splines that we've drawn are the right way around. So if we've got the bottom one the right way around, the top one is also the correct way around. But this has obviously got the same outside profile, as you'll see, as the original spline. So we can either go through and grab these verts and bring them in and bring them down so that it now sits inside the original spline, or we can use the little tools that confused us earlier, the X and Y, and move it that way. So in the top view, if we look at this spline, we know that this little area here sits in the gap. So we should be able to just adjust in the X, and this will shrink it to where we need it to be. And there we can see this is now sat in the gap. If I bring the splines over so they're close by, you'll see what I mean. So this is what you need to look out for, just to make sure you're getting it the right way around. So just make sure everything sits in that. Obviously it's a mirror of this. You know, we can mirror those and bring them this way, and then you should be able to see that everything is sitting in the correct place. Yep, that looks fine to me. So now we have our window frame, which we can make a different color just to not get confused, on our actual window. And now you can see the difference. And we've added in quite a lot of detail there in quite a simple method, just using splines and nothing else. And we've also added material IDs, which now I'll be able to show you what that does. So we can go turn off object color and go to material color, and we can just create a simple, sorry, this is taking a little while to open. We can just create a simple multi-sub object material with 2 different colors, just to show the example. Once the material editor is opened, for some reason it's taking a while. I think I still have a lot of material libraries loaded in there from previous goes. So we can just grab any material, V-Ray material, multi-sub object, keep old, we can just delete a few of those, and we'll just grab a green one in there, and we'll just grab a pink one in there. And if we go into the sweep parameters, this is what we were talking about, use section IDs. Now another handy tool is generate mapping coordinates, real world maps size. This allows the model to follow the flow of the spline. So if this was going to be a wooden frame, creating mapping coordinates would allow the wood grain to follow the path of the window, which would be correct. So you wouldn't have to go in and UVW map it. Real world size is up to you. I personally do use it on objects that aren't displaced. It doesn't work with displacement. We don't need it for these windows because they're going to be metal and rubber. But use section IDs is the tick box that I was talking about earlier, which will then pick up the fact that I gave IDs to the spline edges, to the individual spline areas, ID of 1 and 2. And then hopefully when we apply this, now you'll see that ID 2 would be the rubber seals and ID 1 would be the metal outer. And simple as that. We don't have to go in and add edit polys and select things and give them IDs. It's already got IDs. It's separated and makes it much, much easier for texturing. In the next lesson, we're going to look at building a much more detailed floor rather than just a simple floor plate, and how we can do that using a couple of free scripts or plugins.